Hello class, this is Demetrius Wilson again with Organizational Behavior. We are now on Chapter 8, learning about communication in organizations. Our learning objectives for this chapter are to understand the communication process, compare and contrast different types of communication, compare and contrast different communication channels, understand and learn to overcome barriers to effective communication, understand the role listening plays in communication. Learn how ethics can play a role in how messages are communicated as well as how they are perceived. And learn how verbal and nonverbal communication can carry different meanings among cultures. Communication is the key, especially in the workplace. Without communication, you will have multiple types of breakdowns throughout your work environment, so pay close attention. Communication is vital in organizations. Communication is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. 50 to 90% of a manager's time is spent communicating. So obviously, if you are a manager or going to be a manager, you have to learn how to communicate effectively because 50 to 90% of your time is spent communicating, whether it be to your manager or to your employees. Success on complicated missions at NASA depends on strong communication, and that should be obvious to anyone that something as important as a space program has to have deep, involved, and very, very specific communication and very specific communication skills. Lee Iacocca, who's a past president and CEO of Chrysler, he said that you can have brilliant ideas, but if you can't get them across, your ideas won't get anywhere. And that's so true. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't communicate it to anyone, no one's going to hear about it. The three main functions of communication: transmission of the information, getting it over there to the other person or other people, the coordination of effort, and sharing of emotions and feelings. And you'll see the difference of how you can share or not share emotions and feelings through different modes of communication. The process model of communication. So you see the message goes to, it is encode, decode to the receiver from the sender, right? That's the flow. If you look at the little diagram, the picture shows you how the communication flows. And the medium, or the way in which it is being communicated, is the phone, email, in person, could be instant message, all kinds of different ways. You could probably throw in social media on there as well. So the sender originates and encodes the message and translates the idea into words. Well, this is my idea. Let me put it into words, and then let me encode the message and send it over to the receiver. The medium of this encoded message may be spoken words, written words, or signs. The receiver is a person who actually receives the message. I am now receiving the message. And the receiver decodes the message and assigns meanings to the words. So don't get too far ahead of yourself, knowing that in communication sometimes there is a breakdown, and what is encoded by the sender does not necessarily always mean that's what is decoded by the receiver. Due to noise, the meaning which the receiver assigns may not be the meaning which the sender intended, right? So what I intended to communicate to you may not be what you received from me. And noise is anything that interferes with or distorts the message being transferred. So it could be something that I did, or it could just be somebody talking in the background while you're reading my email. There's a replica of Alexander Graham Bell's original telephone. Doesn't it look great? We've definitely come a long way. And as it states, communication mediums have come a long way. Discussion questions, as always, review those. Barriers to effective communication. So pay close attention to these. Filtering. I'm only hearing certain things, just like a water filter, only certain things are coming out. I'm only hearing and understanding certain things. Selective perception. Being very selective on how I perceive things and what I choose to hear and deal with. Workplace gossip and grapevine, it's always going to be there. Sometimes it's correct, sometimes it's definitely not. Semantics and jargon, things like, we have this different type of language within my company, but we can't use that language with people from the outside because it may diminish the type of or the level of communication that we have. Information overload. Is it too much? Did I give you too much in the email? Is my email 6 pages and it could have just been 4 sentences? Emotional disconnects that will happen, especially in things like emails or memos, where people don't feel the emotion, where they could feel the emotion if it was on a speech. Gender differences in communication. Do men and women differentiate in the way they communicate? Differences in meaning, lack of source of familiarity or credibility, and biased language. Communication realities. Managers can expect, on average, to do only 3 minutes of uninterrupted work on any one task before being interrupted by an incoming email, instant message, phone call, coworker, or other distraction. 3 minutes. Right? I would have thought it was more than that, but it's just 3 minutes, and now that I think about it, yeah, that sounds about right. Back to our organizational behavior toolbox. Tips for reducing miscommunication by jargon. Know your audience. Know who you're talking to. If you're talking to everybody who knows the jargon, then maybe you're okay. But if you're talking to people who are like laymen and they don't understand your company logic or your company talk, then you need to speak in regular terms. Decode your acronyms. Right? Everybody's got these acronyms within their companies, but you need to decode those so people understand. Even if it's somebody within the company, they could be new and not understanding anything of what you're talking about. And limit your jargon use, right? Use your words. They're words, they're there for a reason, right? I know we use the jargon to kind of shorten things up, but don't make someone feel out of place because they don't understand what you're saying. Avoid biased language. So you need to avoid these things and consider using these on the right. So avoid what's on the left, consider using what's on the right. So avoid using black attorney, consider using attorney. Avoid using businessman, consider using business person. Avoid using chairman, consider using chair or chairperson. Avoid using cleaning lady, consider using cleaning or maintenance worker. Avoid using male nurse or nurse, and consider using nurse. Avoid using manpower and consider using staff or personnel. And avoid using secretary and consider using assistant or associate. Consequences of poor listening. Lower employee productivity, of course. Missed sales. You're not listening to your customers or potential customers. Dissatisfied customers, lowered morale, and increased turnover. The receiver's ability to listen effectively is equally vital to effective communication, right? So if you're delivering a message and this person's not a very good listener, then yeah, there's going to be a problem with the communication, and maybe it's not your fault. Listening takes practice, skill, and concentration. We have to know and learn when to close our mouths and open up our ears. Active listening, and you have to know how to actively listen. So listen for message content. You want to listen for feelings. You also want to respond to those feelings. You want to note all cues, paraphrase and restate, and continue to listen to the message for content. Active listening. You're actively listening to what the individual is speaking of. Hopefully you're actively listening to me right now. Back to your organizational behavior toolbox. 10 ways to improve your listening habits. Number 1, start by stopping, right? You want to stop talking, start listening. Don't worry about what you'll say next. A lot of times when people are talking to other individuals and they're listening, they're just worrying. They have it on the tip of their tongue, ready to fire off that bullet and talk about what they want to talk about. Join the senders team. Get on board. Try and figure out and listen things how they come from their perspective, from their head. Don't multitask while listening. I had a problem with this for quite some time until I went to a seminar. If someone would come up and ask me for help, I would continue to type and I'd look at them and I'd say, okay, what do you need? And I'd try and multitask. And in the seminar they told me, they said, stop, put your hands on your knees, turn around, look the person in the eye, and give them your full attention. And I still struggle with that from time to time. 5, try to empathize with the sender's point of view, right? So you want to say, okay, let me see things from their point of view. Let me put their shoes on. If you're confused, ask questions, right? That always helps. Establish eye contact, right? Make sure you look at them. You're not looking around or you're not wandering with your eyes. What is the goal of this communication? Have that in your brain to try and understand it. It's great to be surprised and pay attention to what is not said. So communication freezers. Communication stoppers are things such as criticizing, blaming, ordering, judging, or shaming. Things to avoid saying: telling other people what to do, threatening with else or else implied, making suggestions or telling the other person that what they ought to do, attempting to educate the other person. Look, let me tell you what you need to do. Judging the other person negatively. Hey, listen to this guy. I don't think he knows what he's talking about. Giving insincere praise, like, oh, great presentation, John. Psychoanalyzing the other person. Oh, they must have had issues when they were younger because they're going down this path. Making light of the other person's problems by generalizing. Asking excessive or inappropriate questions. Like, hey, Demetrius, what are you doing tonight? Are we going to the bar? And making light of the problem by kidding. More discussion questions. Be sure to review those. Work on them with your classmates. Verbal communication and the power of storytelling. Love storytelling because it paints a great picture, right? People can close their eyes, you can tell a story, and they'll paint that picture in their head. Stories can help clarify key values and help demonstrate how things are done within an organization. Story frequency, strength, and tone are related to higher organizational commitment, especially if they're success stories. Crucial conversations require more planning, reflection, and skill. Should be obvious. For example, asking for a raise. And I've mentioned that before, that I've successfully asked for a raise and received it. Pitching an innovative proposal. Stakes are high and opinions vary. Emotions are going to run strong. If you have a lot of people with a lot of different opinions about the topic that you're going to bring up, then you know that there's going to be a lot of emotions out there. Back to your organizational behavior toolbox. It is growing like every week. More ways to improve your listening habits. Be the first to say hello. Hello, John. Think before you speak, right? If you say that you don't have a filter, then you should probably say the second thing that pops into your head. Be receptive to new ideas. Be open. Repeat someone's name to yourself and then aloud when being introduced. Ask questions. It's always good. Listen as much, if not more, than you speak. Use eye contact. Smile, and make sure your body language matches your message. Remember, it's what is coming across through your body language that they'll trust more so than what you're saying. Mirror the other person. Have an exit strategy ready, and also be prepared. And even more ways to improve your listening habits. Prepare and be receptive. Focus and don't multitask, as indicated earlier. Establish eye contact. Don't anticipate. Don't, as they're speaking, try and fill in the blanks. Just listen. Empathize with the sender's point of view. Focus on the goal with an open mind. Summarize what you've heard. So, John, if I'm hearing you clearly, this is what you're saying. Seek clarification by asking questions and pay attention to what is not said. Written business communication, the printed word that involves memos, proposals, emails, letters, training manuals, and operating policies. If you're writing it, then you better make sure that it's correct and it relays the right message because it is permanent. Writing communication is often asynchronous and received by many individuals, right? It could be passed along, especially if it's an email forwarded to a lot of different individuals. National Commission on Writing survey outcomes: 67% of salaried employees in large American companies and professional state employees have some writing responsibility. I know that I definitely do. Half of responding companies reported that they take writing into consideration when hiring professional employees. They want to see a sample of what you've done. They want to look at how your thank you letter is constructed, and then they'll make a decision on who they want. Putting Jefferson's rules into action: 5 ways to communicate more with fewer words. Picture the receiver in your mind before you begin to write. Choose simple words, not jargon. Be polite and clear. Make your message brief And direct by trimming redundant words or phrases. Don't be wordy. Choose strong, active verbs. Nonverbal communication. It's not what you don't say, or I'm sorry, it's what you don't say. 55% of in-person communication comes from nonverbal cues like facial expressions, body stance, and tone of voice. Facial expressions like a frown, body stance, I've got my arms crossed, and tone of voice, maybe I'm yelling. 7% of a receiver's comprehension of a message is based on the sender's actual words. Just 7%. And 30% is based on paralanguage or the tone, pace, and volume of the speech. So remember, nonverbal communication, it's what you don't say. You have body language, eye contact, facial expression, posture, touch, and space are all factors of nonverbal communication. Don't use that tone with me. Changing your tone can dramatically change your meaning. I want you to do this exercise on your own, and I want you to do it aloud. So I want you to say these statements out loud, and then I want you to go over what it might mean on your own. Interpersonal distances. A lot of people, you'll hear the term of you're in my personal space, you're in my personal bubble, right? Sometimes you don't like people to get too close. I can understand that. So the green one is your social bubble, your personal bubble is inside the social bubble, and the intimate bubble is inside the personal bubble. You should be able to look at the picture, and it should make very clear sense to you. So selecting the best communication media is an executive skill. So information channel and the information richness, right? So how rich is the information that you're providing? So face-to-face conversation, obviously information richness is going to be high. Video conferencing also high. Telephone conversation is pretty high as well. Emails, handheld devices, blogs, written letters, and memos are all medium, and formal written documents and spreadsheets are very low because they're not saying, they don't have anybody's specific name on there, and they can be put out saved, but their information richness is very low. Verbal or written communications. So verbal communications are a better way to convey feelings, right? You want to talk about someone's performance? Get them in a conference room, let's talk about it, and let me express my feelings as opposed to sending an email. Written communications do a better job of conveying facts. So even after your meeting, then you want to send an email and convey the facts. We met about this on June 21st, 2014. This was the outcome. This is what we agreed to. The guide for when to use written versus verbal communication. So when do you use written communication? When you're conveying facts, the message needs to become part of a permanent file. There is little time urgency. You do not need immediate feedback, and the ideas are complicated. So when do you use verbal communication? Conveying emotion and feeling. The message does not need to be permanent. There is time urgency. You need feedback, and the ideas are simple or can be made simple with explanations. Back to our organizational behavior toolbox, business emails, do's and don'ts. Pay close attention to this. Don't send or forward chain emails. Don't put anything in an email that you don't want the world to see because it will get passed around. Don't write a message in capital letters. This is the equivalent of shouting or cursing. Don't routinely CC everyone. Reducing inbox clutter increases communication. So don't copy everybody. Send it to the intended person. Sometimes you need to copy people, but not all the time. Don't hit send until you spell checked your email. Do use a subject line that summarizes your message. Do make your request in the first line of your email and in parentheses. And if that's all you need to say, stop there. You don't need to be so wordy in the email. Do end your email with a brief sign-off such as thank you followed by your name and contact information. Do think of a work email as a binding communication, and it is. And do let others know if you've received an email in error. Like, I'm not supposed to be on this distribution list. I need to let you know. I received an email from HR VP one time with everybody in the company's salary. And obviously I wasn't supposed to receive that, so I let her know. Email and emotions. Emotionally laden messages require more thought in the choice of channel and how they are communicated. Like if there's some type of thing going on within the company, maybe you need to have a face-to-face conversation. Email communication can convey facts quickly, yet is not recommended choice for sending emotional information. Communication flows in many different directions within an organization. It could be upward to a supervisor, laterally to a coworker, downward to a subordinate, or it could be diagonally to a different department. Different ways, depends on who you're communicating with. Frequent communication is related to better job performance ratings and organizational performance. As you see, there's a pie chart that indicates who managers spend time communicating with at work. External could be customers or clients, 23%. Superiors, or who they report to, 14%. Internal others, 17%. And 46% is their subordinates or their employees. So if I'm communicating with my employees 46% of the time, then I should be able to learn how to communicate with them properly and effectively. Forms of external communication: you have press releases, advertisements, web pages, yes, that is external communication, customer letters, and catalogs. All of these are forms of external communication, things that go out to the external world. The session questions, again, be sure to read them, be sure to review them with your family and friends, with your classmates. You learn a lot from them. Manage your communication wisely. Do you properly use online communications? Is your outgoing voicemail greeting professional, right? Or is, hey, it's Demetrius, you know what to do, beep. Do you scrutinize your social networking website? And have you Googled yourself lately? Have you checked and to see what's out there about you? So be aware of the remarks that freeze communication. Make a conscious effort to reduce comments that stop effective communication. Don't criticize, blame, order, judge, or shame. It's not conducive to successful and effective communication. And lastly, more discussion questions. Be sure to go over them with your classmates, family, or friends. They are very engaging. You'll learn a lot from them. I always do. As always, have a good day and a great week, and I'll speak with you when we get to the next chapter.